Breaking college football news, North Carolina nearing a deal to make Bill Belichick the coach of the Tar Heels. That's the latest from our senior NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, and our 24/7 Sports partners at Inside Carolina. The six-time Super Bowl champion head coach would be taking over for Mack Brown, who's 1 year older. Brown was fired in the midst of his sixth season in Chapel Hill, his second go-round there. Belichick has nearly 50 years of experience coaching in the National Football League, but he has never coached at the college level. He would be taking over a Carolina program that went 6-6 this season. They have a bowl game coming up, but they finished fifth to last in the expanded ACC. So let's get into it with former ACC Offensive Player of the Year, Danny Kanell, and North Carolina grad, Chip Patterson. I'm going to cede the floor to Chip because he is a UNC grad. What's the feeling in North Carolina right now, Chip, as they are nearing a deal for perhaps the greatest football coach of all time?
Well, first, relief that this is over. Oh, my gosh, Chris, Danny. I mean, this has been an absolute roller coaster of a week because I think that Bill Belichick at the beginning of this search was interviewed in a long candidate list as a bit of a courtesy. And then the way that we understand it is that the presentation that Bill Belichick offered to the search committee was so in-depth that it warranted follow-ups from the athletic director, follow-up conversations from the chancellor, and now, eventually, as Jonathan Jones is reporting, the final steps are being done to make him the next head coach. This is someone who is laying out a plan, as he has even described publicly, of creating a pro-type environment at the college level, of having it staffed like a pro-type environment with personnel and then also with coaching, of having the funding and strength of nutrition similar to what you would have at the NFL level, and trying to attract future pros in a way that would be able to level up the talent at North Carolina. Speaking from sort of my own perspective, I will say that the hire of Bill Belichick represents an investment in football that hasn't always been there for a university where men's basketball has always led the charge, and where investment in the Olympic sports, including women's soccer, which just won a national championship this week, has always been part of the university's identity. No, if you are hiring Bill Belichick, if you are signing up for everything that is in his pitch and his plan for what the Bill Belichick-led North Carolina football program is, you are prioritizing football in a way that we have not always seen. North Carolina, top 5, top 6 in terms of football investment in the ACC. This is certainly closing the gap in the conference and also bringing you up to speed with the rest of big-time college football. Will it work out? We'll see. This is a 72-year-old taking on a young man's game, but from the perspective of the hire, it is certainly far different than anything else that North Carolina has done in the past.
And just to reiterate where we are right now with our reporting, it's not a done deal just yet. Jonathan Jones saying that they're nearing a deal to make Bill Belichick their head coach. Nothing's been finalized as of yet, but Danny, reading the tea leaves, it looked like this could be done soon, and it's, as Chip said, it's been something we kind of been sitting on for the last week or so.
Yeah, there have been a lot of rumors that have been going out there. There's been a lot of speculation. I think this is great news. This is great news for us, Hassel. It's great news for the Cover 3 pod. It's good for anybody that talks about college football, because you've got maybe the best coach in the history of the NFL that is now going to be walking the sidelines in college. Now, will it work? I have no idea. But this is great. This is awesome for us as fodder. And I know there's been a lot made. Chip even brought up his age. I don't think age is a big deal. I don't think it's something that should prevent them from making this hire. And I know it's kind of awkward because Mack Brown was 73 and they parted ways. But I thought that was about lack of results. I thought if Mack had gone 9-10 wins this year, it wouldn't be a problem. Just like it won't be for Bill Belichick. If he wins, he will attract top-tier talent. He will attract players that want to be coached hard, and there's no doubt he knows how to coach football. My question is, can he relate to today's player? That was eventually why I think Nick Saban exited the game of college football, because he had stopped relating to today's player. Will Bill Belichick adapt? How does he adapt? How does he relate to today's 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old?
Even if he's talking to a graduate transfer in the portal, he's 50 years older than that graduate transfer, almost 60 years older than some of the high schoolers that he might be recruiting. Chip, what do you think his biggest challenge is going to be going from the NFL to this new age of college football?
I think it is going to be to reverse the narrative that happens within that building, or the narrative of a North Carolina program that has fallen short of expectations, that has failed to finish seasons strong. The narrative of a North Carolina football program that constantly, I mean, Danny can speak to this too, it just simply has not been intimidating. When you think about the rest of the ACC, when you think about college football as a whole, they look at this program as one that does have a little bit of flash, that does look really good in those baby blues. But the Bill Belichick mindset, that no-nonsense, do your job, that icy cold demeanor is very, very far from where we were with the more, boisterous or the, political Mac Brown. It's not soft. It's rough around the edges. And North Carolina football has not necessarily been known as being a program that is rough around the edges. So how are you going to be able to marry this, vision of what a pro program looks like at the college level with also just being able to change the mindset within that locker room, within that building, and being able to create an edge and a chip on the shoulder? I mean, it's something Danny and I talked about in Indianapolis a lot. He said North Carolina players get off the bus looking good, but when you hit them in the mouth, how do they always respond? Can Bill Belichick change the locker room mentality into a group that welcomes that violence?
And I think that's been his reputation always, is maximizing players, have mentally and physically tough teams, and that's what obviously he's going to try to bring to Chapel Hill. I don't know if there's any middle ground on this, Chip. I'd be curious to know what you think. I think it either works in spectacular fashion or it's a complete and utter disaster. Like, I don't know if there's a middle ground where they're 7-5, 8-4, and everybody's kind of like, oh, this is kind of working. I think it's either going to work great or it's not. And I think it could unfold. Now, don't be alarmed by this. But remember Urban Meyer when he went to Jacksonville? You're like, hey, there's a coach that has been great in college. He is making the jump to the NFL. Why couldn't it work? That's what Jacksonville thought. They were getting in a coach that was a great coach. That's why they spent $100 million on him. It did not work, and it was spectacularly bad because Urban Meyer didn't adapt to the NFL player. That, to me, is going to be something that will be a challenge for Bill Belichick. How do you adapt and relate to today's player? The style of coaching, the style of motivation, the style of recruiting, which he's never had to do before. It is more transactional than it's ever been before, but it's still a relational business. Does he build relations with his team and the players he's trying to recruit?
Chip?
Yeah, one thing I would say is we're going to get to know right away in 2025 because you look on that schedule and there's a date against Clemson. And like, who better represents a different level? The thing that is the farthest from the pro model that exists right now, and it is Dabo Swinney's Clemson Tigers program. I mean, that is the college football of old, and what North Carolina is doing is investing in what it believes the college football model of the future, which is a professional type environment. And so that'll be the great test in year one. And in terms of whether it's going to work well or fail spectacularly, we'll know that when Bill Belichick does end up wrapping up his time with North Carolina, because it will be, is this program better off than it was in the beginning? Or did it just get similar results with more investment and more cost along the way? And on the player personnel standpoint, does Bill Belichick connect? We have already seen messages from players who entered the transfer portal from North Carolina. Gentlemen, it's convenient. In the last 15 minutes, they've all shared that they've taken their name out of the transfer portal and have decided to stay at North Carolina. So I do think all those rings are going to end up doing a good job of attracting talent along the way.
I do want to ask you, because we've been talking about successes and failures, and Chip basically said the line of demarcation is the program going to be in a better state when he leaves than when he goes in? But I think there's going to be a lot of people looking at this with all the rings he has in the NFL, Danny, that his success is like, you got to get to the college football playoff at some point in this tenure. Where do you put the line of demarcation for a successful Bill Belichick tenure at North Carolina if this happens?
I think it's got to be better than you had with Mac Brown, which was pretty much 8 or 9 wins wins every year, so you better get to double-digit wins. And if you're 10-2, you're at least in that conversation late in November, maybe the playoff bubble. And you've seen this North Carolina team play for ACC titles before in the last 10 years. So I think that's the expectation. And with the automatic bid, then you should be in the playoffs. So I think that would be the expectation. You are hiring this coach for that reason specifically. So I think it's got to be playoffs, ACC championships, or at least playing for them late in the season would be the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, Chip, that a lot of people maybe on the outside, you know the program a lot better than we do, but they're going to expect this team to compete for championships with Bill Belichick, and anything less would be a failure.
If Bill Belichick wins an ACC championship, it doesn't matter if he's only there 2 years, it's a success. North Carolina has not won an ACC championship since 1980. And the ACC that was around in 1980 is not as difficult to win as the ACC that is around in 2025. And what that would do is it would prove to literal generations of North Carolina fans, of North Carolina alum, of North Carolina residents, and maybe future students in the future that ACC football championships can be won if you've got the right investment and if you've got the right coach in place. And so that's why I would say that, you know, if you were in the camp that was really pushing Bill Belichick's candidacy, you have to imagine that he was going to get this program into a place where they wouldn't just make it to the ACC championship game, but that they would be able to win an ACC championship. Because again, not since 1980 means that a lot of North Carolina fans just don't believe it's possible. It's just been a very pie in the sky type vision. If you win a championship, a conference championship even at the ACC level, then I think that it was worth every bit of the investment that you've had, just because you've changed, like, forget externally, you've changed internally what North Carolina believes it can accomplish.
And the one thing we haven't talked about, because again, it hasn't been finalized, but the expectation, Chip, is that he's going to bring his successor with him as well, and his son, Steve Belichick, who's a defensive coordinator currently for the Washington Huskies. And I remember, I think we might have discussed it on the Cover 3 pod, when last year Steve Belichick was in Washington, everyone was going wild because Bill Belichick had the cutoff Washington Husky hoodie while he was watching a Washington practice. So he's been talking to his son about the college game. Some of the issues that plague college football and that every coach is having to deal with will not be a surprise to Bill Belichick. So I would imagine he's been gleaning information, asking his son what the landscape like, what the current players are like, what the schemes are like, what he needs to do in order to make a program successful, which is probably it's probably a chapter in the 400-page Bible, is some of that information that he gleaned from Steve Belichick, who it should be, because it seems like if this deal gets worked out, it's because Bill Belichick got everything that he wanted, which I would assume would be his son Steve as the defensive coordinator and the next head coach at the University of North Carolina.
They tried something similar like that at a school that I follow, Iowa.
Yeah.
That did not work out with Brian Ferentz, but I think Bill Belichick might have a little bit more pull now than Kirk Ferentz did in the state of Iowa. Again, it's not done yet. It's not done yet, but we are nearing a deal between Bill Belichick and the North Carolina Tar Heels as the greatest NFL coach in history. I don't think many can argue that. Is looking like he's going to try his hand at college football, entering his age 73 coaching season. Guessing that there will be an emergency Cover 3 podcast whenever this does officially happen. Be sure to scan that QR code, take you right there, and download and follow. You'll get updates as soon as that happens. Up next, it's our Bowl-nanza. Hey, North Carolina's playing in a bowl game. So is Clemson. We've got picks for all the bowls and the playoff that Clemson will be playing in, along with SMU. That's next.